Welcome back, everybody, to my reaction series to Caesar in Gaul by Kings and Generals. And once again, a big thank you to Kings and Generals who are now subscribed to this channel. So welcome, and I highly encourage every single one of you to subscribe to their channel. There's a link in the description to this original content. Let's give them all the credit for their great and difficult work to put this together. Check out their videos. They've got a lot of fantastic content. This is an opportunity for us to have a conversation about this period in history, and we're using this great resource that is available to do that. So please make sure you give them a like, give them a comment, and subscribe. We're picking up right where we left off. We're in the middle of Caesar's invasion of Britain, which has been kind of a mixed bag so far. Didn't start off well, starting to do a little better, but we'll see where it goes. And we'll probably do this in 2 more parts, so we'll do about half of what's left today, pick up with the rest tomorrow.
Once again, the Britons sent a peace delegation, and Caesar, knowing that his options were limited and that he did not have enough resources to carry out a full campaign, accepted and then hastily withdrew from the island during the night. However, on his way back to Gaul, 2 ships were blown off course in a storm. 300 Romans were stranded and surrounded by a Belgae tribe, the Morini, who Caesar had only recently subjugated and were keen for spoils and revenge. The Romans were assailed from all sides with missiles in hit-and-run attacks against their small group. Caesar caught wind of this and gathered as much cavalry as he could to personally lead them to the men's rescue, managing to ride down the Gauls and save the Romans with only minimal casualties.
This is the kind of thing right here that gives your men great confidence in you as a commander, and also instills in them pride and a desire to be willing to follow you anywhere. He could have let those 300 men go and just said, you know what, we lost them. It was an unfortunate incident. I'm not risking any of my men to go after them. But he rides personally to their rescue and bails out what's left of them. That's a big, big deal in terms of inspiring confidence in the men that you command.
Labienus would later be sent into the Belgae territory to winter there and reinforce Roman rule in the area. Neither the invasion of Britain nor this foray into Belgae territory were significant military achievements. However, they show why Caesar was so loved by his men. He was brave, achieving things no Roman had ever done before. He was calm under pressure, and most importantly, he would lead from the front and showed that he cared for his soldiers and was prepared to risk his life to save them.
And remember, this is a time in history, well, much of history is defined by times like these, where you have multiple classes of people, and Caesar is part of that nobility class that exists in Rome. Now, Rome's a republic, I get that, but Rome very much had these classes of nobility, and the family he comes from, the Julii family, is one of the most renowned, certainly not the very top of society in Rome, but it's right up there. And for him to get down and dirty with the men, to lead from the front, to fight with them, shows them that he is the common man's general. He's not above them. He's not better than them. And I think that probably went a long way to why he was able to get them to fight.
The Britain campaign had not achieved much for the Romans, but it did provide Caesar with crucial knowledge about the Britons' military, the climate, and the level of preparation that he would need to succeed, lessons he would learn from for next year. Moreover, the Roman public and Senate were amazed by his feat of crossing the Channel into unknown territories, and a full 20 days of Thanksgiving were declared to recognize his achievement. After dealing with some administrative matters in 54 BC, Caesar began planning a second campaign in Britain. Almost 600 transports and 28 warships were built, implementing Veneti shipbuilding techniques better suited to the rough seas. Caesar called on his Gallic allies and vassals and amassed 4,000 cavalry, including tribal leaders.
So let's back up for a second and talk about this shipbuilding, because they've learned from their earlier mistakes. Remember when he had the naval battle earlier, and he had ships that were more suited for the river, suited for the coast, not really suited for seafaring. He's learned from that, and he's learned his engineers have learned about shipbuilding and how to make a ship that can withstand these rougher seas, especially things like crossing the channel. And so this is an important thing when you're conquering other peoples, is to learn from them and to take the strengths of those people and what they do well and add it to what you do well.
Once again bolstering his army and minimizing the risk of revolts in Gaul. He left half of his cavalry and 3 legions in Gaul and crossed with 5 legions and 2,000 cavalry, more than double his previous numbers.
So again, 5 legions, we're talking 30,000 men at most that he's taking with him. So, I mentioned this in previous episodes. If you want to try and easily think of how this goes in your mind, imagine a legion being like the size of a pretty decent sized army division during the American Civil War. We're talking 4,000 to 6,000 men. Think of a cohort as being like a battalion, maybe 400 to 600 men.
This was going to be a full invasion. Caesar landed at the same place as before, but this time he was unopposed. He quickly established a camp in the area and sent out scouts, who promptly brought back some local prisoners. They informed Caesar that a large army had actually gathered to oppose the landing, but had retreated upon seeing the size of Caesar's force. Leaving a legion at the camp, he immediately set out in search of the Briton army. The Romans marched through the night and were able to catch up to the Britons in a hill fort on the other side of a river. Although the Romans were tired, Caesar was determined to confront the Britons and began crossing. The Britons' cavalry and chariots rushed down from the high ground to harass the Romans as they crossed.
Now, if I'm just looking at this on the surface, not really knowing the numbers exactly on either side, I mean, I know what Caesar's got. He left a legion behind, so he's probably got 20,000 men here. The Britons have all the advantages, right? They're on a hill fort. They're defending. Caesar's got to cross a river. He's got to attack uphill. And the Britons are also kind of taking advantage of this, and they're attacking down the hill. So they seem to have all the advantages here.
Caesar's allied Gallic cavalry were experienced in fighting in such scenarios and proved their value, chasing off the Britons, who quickly retreated to the woods surrounding the fort. As the legions began their advance up the hill, they were harassed from the woods by the Britons, preventing them from making significant progress until the 12th Legion formed a testudo and were able to make a rudimentary rampart in order to move over the walls. The Romans were now inside the fortifications, but the Britons were quick to escape the fort and retreated deeper into the woods. Considering the men had carried out a night march and battle, and that he did not know the terrain and whether any more Britons would be waiting for him, Caesar made camp for the night. The next day, word reached him that a storm in the night had again damaged his ships. Without the ships, Caesar would be at the mercy of the Britons, so he decided to prioritize overseeing their repairs.
So everything he's just gained, he's now lost. He's got to pull back out of the fort. He's got to give up the ground he just fought so hard to take. That had to have been demoralizing for the men.
He commanded his army to reassemble and march back to the beach. Upon arriving, he discovered that 40 ships were beyond repair, but the rest were salvageable. Caesar ordered that the ships be brought onto the beach, and a large wall was constructed encompassing the camp and the ships. He also sent word to Labienus to build more ships in Gaul. He then set off once again to find the Britons. They were in the same hill fort, but it was a larger force than before, under the command of Cassivelanus, a tribal leader beyond the Thames, who was appointed the leader of a united coalition against the Romans.
So this is brilliant now on the part of the Britons. They have banded together against a common enemy. There's a lot of different tribes here that you're dealing with, just like you deal with the Gauls and with the Belgians and others. But they're smart. They're not going to fight against each other. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. We need to focus right now on the invader, and let's join together. And they even managed to appoint somebody in command over them. These are all winning strategies. Let's see what happens.
Caesar had marched past this fort, possibly not wanting to attack such a large and fortified enemy, instead attacking exposed villages to try and draw Cassivellaunus out. At the same time, his troops were constantly harassed by the Britons' cavalry and chariots fighting skirmishes with the Roman cavalry on the flanks, luring them into the forests before turning back to inflict significant casualties. The Britons seemingly allowed the Roman advanced party time to begin making a fort for the night. However, as construction began, the Britons attacked again.
Got surrounded.
The Romans who were on guard were able to form a line to defend the site, but the fighting was brutal, with the Briton chariots darting in and out of the Roman formation. Caesar was forced to send a further 2 cohorts from the vanguard to quickly reinforce this line.
About 1,000 men.
The Romans were not used to the Briton style of fighting, particularly chariot hit-and-run tactics, drawing out the Roman infantry from formation who were too slow to catch them. At one point, the Britons were able to draw out a maniple far enough to create a gap, which they were able to exploit, punching through the Roman line and inflicting many casualties. It was not until the rest of the Roman army caught up that the Britons disengaged and retreated. Cassivellaunus was proving himself a cunning enemy. Caesar marched to the Thames, towards Cassivellaunus's own territories, in an attempt to draw them out. Though he was able to find a position on the river where he could cross, the legions were once again harassed by Britons amassed on the other bank, who quickly retreated once the Romans were on dry land. Cassivellaunus then made the decision to dismiss the vast majority of his army except for 4,000 chariots, likely realizing that fighting a pitched battle against the Roman heavy infantry would be futile. A smaller force would serve him much better in a guerrilla war. It would be easier to hide, faster to move, and need fewer supplies to maintain. Given the fact that he knew the terrain and Caesar did not, this was a smart and calculated move.
Makes sense.
However, Cassivellaunus's previous wars with other Britons had made him many enemies, and his new guerrilla tactics were not popular with the Trinobantes, whose leader Cassivellaunus had previously killed.
So everything we just talked about uniting the forces and the enemy of my enemy is my friend, is now going to go by the wayside because one of his enemies is going to befriend the Romans, which this is the kind of thing you have to expect when you've got these warring tribes. Somebody's going to see the opportunity here and say, man, if I just side with the Romans, maybe I can help turn the tide and then I'll be rewarded and maybe they'll put me in charge. You know, who knows what'll happen.
They sent envoys to Caesar, surrendering and promising hostages. The Trinobantes were second in power only to Cassivellaunus himself, and without their support, numerous tribes followed suit, surrendering to Caesar. They also provided critical intel to Caesar, including the location of Cassivellaunus's capital.
That had to have been brutal for him to know that these men have turned and these tribes have gone over to the other side. I mean, this is a huge advantage, especially after he dismissed a big part of his army.
Caesar marched there, another hill fort, burning all villages and fields on the way, and besieged it from both sides, once again hoping to draw the Briton leader into a direct confrontation. Cassivellaunus, however, did not take the bait. Although his guerrilla tactics were effective, they were taking a toll on the Britons, and the defenders within the capital quickly fled. Cassivellaunus realized he needed to gain a victory. Not wanting to fight Caesar directly though, he instead sent envoys to 4 allied kings in Kent, who launched an attack on the Roman camp on the beach in order to try and draw Caesar away from Cassivellaunus's land.
So this is one legion here, so we're talking maybe 5,000 men defending the beach, and if they lose and Caesar loses his ships, he's going to be kind of stuck. He's going to have to build a whole new navy to be able to get back across if it comes to it.
However, the Roman fortifications were strong, and the force Caesar had left on the beach was easily able to repel the attack.
Nice.
Cassivellaunus was forced to sue for peace. Caesar readily accepted in exchange for hostages and tribute. Winter was closing in, and he had no desire to spend it in unknown, hostile lands. The Romans returned to the beach and sailed back to Gaul. Overall, it is hard to see the invasion as an immense military victory. Cassivellaunus had not been decisively defeated in battle nor captured, and the Romans maintained no presence in Britain. From the Briton standpoint, it was a strategic victory, having successfully pushed the Romans out of their lands. Still, his campaigns in Britain had taken 2 years, and without Caesar's presence, Gaul was beginning to stir. In 54 BC, a Gallic tribe, the Eburones, under their leader Ambiorix, successfully revolted in Belgica, ambushing and destroying the 7,000 to 9,000 strong Roman detachment that had been sent to winter in their territory at Attuatica. Following this success, Ambiorix began to besiege the Roman garrison in the Nervii territory, and a general revolt in the area broke out, the Indutio Maris and the Treveri also rising in rebellion and being supported by the Germanic tribes across the Rhine. This was a dangerous position. Caesar had spread his legions across Gaul in order to not put too much strain on the resources of one area, and thus divided, they were vulnerable targets.
Remember, we talked about this, about how when Caesar's not around, just like when Napoleon wasn't around during the Napoleonic Wars, the men that he leaves in charge may not be as capable. They may not be able to unite and defeat an enemy the way they can when he's present. So, we're seeing that play out here. So I'm going to wrap it up right there because we've got about 20 minutes of video left in this series. I'm sure the last part's going to be focused pretty heavily on his fight against Vercingetorix, which is kind of the end of the Gallic Wars. So I'll be curious. That's probably the part of the Gallic Wars I know the most about, and probably a lot of people too, because just it's such a famous battle, and the outcome and everything is well known. So we'll get into that in tomorrow's episode, but let me know your thoughts about everything we just talked about, and we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.